How was your weekend?
It was good. I met my niece.
Were you like, sup, niece?
Yeah, I dapped her up.
What did she say anything yet?
No, she's 3 weeks old.
Like, what's her deal? Is she just like pissed at you or?
One, two, three, four.
These boys only want the best stuff. They want the cream of the crop. They don't want none of that microbase shit. They want the shit that pops. Oscar bait, black and white. Maybe something French. If it's got more than one explosion, honey, put that shit on the bench. Oscar Wieners, Oscar Wieners, Oscar Wieners. These boys are the Oscar Wieners.
Yum, yum.
Oscar Wieners.
Welcome to Oscar Wieners, the only show on the internet where Hollywood's biggest night is 24/7. I
Wow.
am Michael Bly.
Whoa, name change. And I am skiddly boop bop doopidly doop. That's what my family calls me. That's my God-given name. But since we're friends, you and I, you can call me Ander. That would be nice. That would be cool.
I'm gonna stick with the skibbidily.
You already forgot it.
Yeah, I don't know what you
It's a
said.
little
Ander,
insensitive.
this is a show where every week we choose a random best picture winner and we talk about it and try to figure out if it is best picture worthy.
Is
And this week we're
it?
talking about 1936's
Did you forget?
no, outstanding production
Oh,
winner, Mutiny
what?
on the Bounty.
What's that?
Every
Is
so
that like a discount award?
if you go on the Oscars website every year, like if
I've never been there. I never will.
it's I recommend it. I actually have it bookmarked.
Okay.
Um,
Nerd, but
uh,
okay.
but if you go on there and go year by year, you'll see like the names. They'll change the name of like Best Picture, or like it'll just be different, like as they try to figure out what exactly the Oscars
Are
is.
you telling me that some of these movies are not technically best pictures?
Yeah, today we're talking about an outstanding production winner of the year.
The whole show is compromised then.
Yeah.
This is not a best picture winner.
But it was a pretty sick production.
It was a pretty the production was pretty darn good. All right, fine. We're
Uh,
talking about an outstanding production then. I got to shift my whole frame of mind, but okay.
you just like
That's
crossed out
fine.
your notes.
I mean,
Like Jesus.
my notes are garbage now. It's
Everything was
useless.
predicated on Best Picture.
That's what all I
Uh
was directing towards.
so yeah, we're talking about Mutiny on the Bounty, directed by Frank Lloyd and starring what are these idiots? Charles Lawton as Captain Bligh,
Biggest eyebrows in the biz.
truly, and Deepest Jowls.
His jowls are a chasm.
He
That's
is
how
a
deep they are.
bulldog faced man.
Oh my God, that's a good description. He's the most bulldog looking man I've ever seen.
And Clark Gable as Fletcher Christian, the most hero ass name in the biz.
You know, this is a real story.
I just found that out.
I just found that out
I
too.
was like, what?
So so these are all real guys. Fletcher Christian is a real guy. Fletcher Christian, no, I can't explain. I'm on this ship and it is quite a pain. It's true. I'm sailing the ocean blue.
Mutiny.
What's
Your
your
price of
price? Sail.
We're tired today.
This is the worst. This is I'm
I
going
can't
on
find
record. This is the worst.
I just want to put it out there. I can't find my rhythm and I think it's gonna be a disastrous episode. I'm searching for a rhythm. I can't fucking find it.
I'm searching
Um,
for a reason.
so Clark Gable plays Fletcher Christian, and then I guess the
Quite well.
final lead-ish guy would be Franco
No.
Tone, who plays Roger
No.
Byam.
His name is what?
It's uh his first name is Franchot.
Franchot.
Franco?
That collection of letters is spelled Franco. That's crazy to me.
Franco Tone? That'd be kind
They
of a
were
cool
on
name.
one. 30s.
So yeah, Mutiny on the Bounty is the story, the based on a true story.
He plays, sorry, Franchot plays who? He plays Roger?
Yeah, Byam,
Okay.
the loyal guy who also wants to give Clark Gable a kiss.
Nice.
So Mutiny on the Bounty is the story of the USS, not USS, it's the HMS, it's some fucking
The
ship.
British, whatever
It's
they
a
do.
British version Royal
Yeah.
Navy or whatever. It's
Yeah.
the Bounty that sails. They're going to Tahiti to collect plants.
We gotta go to Tahiti, John.
and and the movie literally starts with Clark Gable's character walking into a bar and being like, "Hey, random men in this bar, you've been recruited, so you're gonna be on this boat for 2 years. You don't like it? Too bad."
I honestly, in retrospect, I honestly forgot that was the whole introduction to the film. And what a wild, he just shows up to a bar. Imagine just being at a bar with your friends, with your mates, perhaps. And then all of a sudden, some
Nice.
dude in a fancy hat comes in with epaulets on. And he's like, actually, you're all in the Navy today and for the next 2 years.
That
Is
would
that
suck.
fine? Is
Well,
that cool?
What's funny about that opening scene is like, because Clark Gable is like forcing these men to be in the Navy, I'm like, this guy's a villain.
Yeah, that was
But
my
that-
initial impression.
But then, 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh no, this guy's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, you quickly find out that he's kind of he's like a renegade. He's like a cool teacher. You know what I mean? He's like your cool English
Yeah.
teacher.
He says
he's
like fuck, and you're like,
he's like, Shakespeare said it. I don't know if Shakespeare did, but he's kind of like, he's got the vibe where he's an officer on the ship. He's not the captain, so he's not the head haunch, but he kind of undermines the captain at certain turns because the captain is
put it mildly, we have children.
Okay,
listening.
sorry. The most vile character cinema has ever crafted, I think, that I've ever seen.
Charles Lawton as Captain Bligh is maybe the greatest villain in the history of cinema.
I don't know. I wouldn't call him the greatest villain in terms of how compelling he is as a villain, but I think in terms of just how bad a guy he is the worst guy. Like, picture like a bad boss. If you've ever had a bad boss, this is 18 times, maybe 19 times worse because you're on a boat. And only for that reason.
Excuse me, I burped.
His first impression to the crew, people who have literally just met him that day and are going to be sailing with him for the next 2 years. His first impression is, let me flog this guy who's already dead.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah.
So basically, he just orders a guy to whip this guy, even though the guy's like, Captain, he's dead already. He's like, oh, flog him anyway.
What did
the crew needs to know?
What did that guy do, by the way? Was he like a deserter? The guy who's dead and gets flogged right in the beginning?
I think he must have been attempting to desert, because how else could you get in trouble the first day of being at sea? It's like it's like getting detention the first day of class.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you do that? How do you pull that off?
I mean, that's like what follows is Mr. Bligh, Captain Bligh being an absolute dill hole.
Big dill hole. Yeah.
Andrew, you haven't seen this movie, correct?
In general?
Like you hadn't seen it before?
Oh yeah, before. Yeah, I've seen it now. Now I've seen it. But no, I wasn't naturally inclined to watch 1936's Mutiny on the Bounty. Bounty?
I also haven't seen it. We watched this together. It's the first movie we watched together.
That's special. That's truly this is a milestone, I think.
Yeah, we were holding hands the whole time.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
What did you think of this movie?
HR violations across the board, I think, for this ship. Um, there were, I mean, the whole conflict stems around how bad this guy, Captain Bligh, is as a captain.
Yeah.
The air around it is like, we're pirates, we're going on an adventure. It does pull you in from the start. You're like, all right, we're heading out. We're gonna go get breadfruit. I forget what they were doing, honestly. I forget what the MacGuffin was. They're
Yeah.
trying to go to Tahiti to get breadfruit, which I don't know what that is, but I guess it's valuable, so they're trying to get some. They
Captain
just have
Bligh is just like truly putting as much distance, like creating such a large fissure between him and the crew, where he is constantly, what's the word for whipping?
flogging.
Flogging them. He has Robert Byam, he's just
Who's
like
an
an
officer.
officer. Yeah, he's an officer on the ship.
A midshipman.
He wants to be there. He wasn't recruited. He's like
Yeah.
happy to be
He
there.
joined the Navy. He's kind of like the biggest nerd in this whole crew.
He really is. And
Yeah.
he another guy starts a fight with him, and then Bly blames Robert Byam for starting the fight, and then has him go to the top
Of the
mast
mast.
of
Yeah.
the tallest mast on the ship,
The crow's nest, I believe they call it.
and he ties himself there with a rope, and that's his punishment. And there's like a huge storm.
Yeah, so he's just
And
getting whipped around by wind and crazy rains.
yeah, and Clark
For
Gable
hours.
gets him down. He's like, "We got to get this guy down. He's gonna die." And then he gets him down, and then Captain Bly's like, "What are you doing?"
Get
Put
him back
up
up.
there. Obviously, he was being reprimanded.
The fight that they started was so bad and weird too. It just like someone got slapped in the bum, right?
Yeah, Robert Byam is going below deck, and then like this guy who he has like a problem with, like gives him a little kick in the pants, and then Robert Byam comes back up and like starts to like shove him, and then Captain Bly's like, "Oh."
That is what he said. Yeah, one of the classic movie quotes of all time.
I think this movie bangs.
Really?
Yeah,
In a good way.
I really like this movie a lot.
So they go to Tahiti. They get to Tahiti, in spite of all this tumult.
Yeah,
They get there. It's an island paradise, and they just kind of chill there, get some breadfruit, relax with the natives. Clark Gable's character, he hooks up. Freaking who's the Roger, whatever, the
Robert
guy who
Byam.
got Robert Byam.
Roger
He hooks
Byam,
up.
excuse me.
Roger Byam.
You were right.
Everybody's kind of having a good old time, and then Captain Bligh comes in and basically ruins it. Everything is ruined at Captain Bligh's behest, basically.
What's funny about this movie is like the structure is very much like that, where it's like you have a scene, people will be doing something that's like totally normal, like it might be like slightly naughty, or like they might just be like the recruited guys might have like a pretty normal complaint, like, "Hey, the meat you're serving us is garbage, and like it isn't enough to feed us, and we're hungry." And Captain Bligh erupts and like punishes them like in a horrific way. That's like
Meanwhile, he's stealing the good food for the officers.
Right.
Actually, not even for the officers, for himself.
I think for himself, yeah.
Yeah.
And like so the structure is kind of repetitive, but at the same time, I found the tension like really I guess like engaging.
The
and I was just
between the crew and
the crew
the
and
captain.
Captain Bligh, yeah. And I was just like the whole time, I mean, the movie being called Mutiny on the Bounty, you're just waiting for these guys to be like, all right, enough's enough.
That kind of bugs me, actually. I feel like the title is a spoiler. Because there's no mystery as to whether or not there's going to be a mutiny on the Bounty. You kind of know what's going to happen going in.
Well, no, there's a question mark at the end of Bounty. It's like Mutiny on the Bounty?
Just a tiny little question mark, just in this little
in
fine
parentheses.
Print. Yeah. Just to give the audience a sense of I guess a question of whether or not this will happen. Spoiler alert, it does. There is a mutiny on the Bounty, the Bounty being the ship. The mutiny is earned, deserved. Captain Bligh basically gets his comeuppance. It's pretty cool. Like the whole crew, there's like the crew is kind of like split in half. And then
Yeah.
half of them basically go on this tiny little escape raft. They're banished to just like sail wherever. Fletcher Christian, Clark Gable's character, who stages the mutiny because he's the most pissed, decides not to kill Captain Bligh, which
A horrible mistake.
yeah, horrible mistake. Like we were watching this and we were like, no, dude, you gotta off that man, right?
Yeah, literally kill everybody who isn't for the mutiny, and then just act like they just died in the during the voyage.
But you know what? I get it. Like murder is pretty tough. You can't just like kill a guy.
Really?
Yeah, murder is like not only is it like physically difficult, it's kind of tough on your conscience, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it sounds like you're speaking from experience.
No, I've never, you know,
You've never
even
committed the
considered.
sin of murder.
No, I wouldn't do that. But I feel like from people who have done it, from their experience, they're like, yeah, it kind of hits the old conscience a little bit.
Kind of a no-no.
Yeah, a little bit of a no-no. Some regrets to follow. So he chose not to. He spares him. By sparing him, he sends him into the open sea, you know, with just a boat and like barely any rations, but basically just enough to survive.
Yeah, he gives him like the just enough, like you said, to survive. Like he's like, you'll probably die, but if somehow you can pull this out of your ass or whatever and make gold, I don't know what I'm saying, you might be able to survive.
The problem is the consequences for mutiny at this time in England, and this takes place in the 1700s, which I guess we probably should have mentioned. But at time the law is if you mutiny, that's hanged. You get hanged for that.
Yeah, you're absolutely a traitor for that.
So if they all sail back and Captain Bligh somehow survives, he's gonna be like, yeah, hang these guys because they mutinied us.
We've been mutinized.
We've been mutinized. We've been mutated. So the risk is if this dude survives, you're basically all screwed forever.
Right. And guess what? Captain Bligh fucking lives.
Who saw that coming?
Out of pure spite, I feel like he was like, I'm gonna survive just so I can punish these mutineers.
Spite is such a powerful motivator, dude. Like
it really is.
I've been biking a lot recently. And sometimes the only thing that gets me motivated to get out there is because I follow Lance Armstrong on an app called Strava that like tracks your biking progress, and he's always out there, and I just like, I gotta beat him. I gotta beat his ass.
Yeah.
He's my white whale, and I'm the Moby Dick. No. I'm Ahab. Yeah.
This movie kind of like, I've never read Moby Dick. This movie just felt like probably what I imagine Moby Dick a little bit feels like.
No, not even close. None of my mind. I've also never read Moby Dick, but you're way off. I can say with certainty that you are just.
You're like, isn't that amazing? I could just have an opinion that completely negates your opinion, and it doesn't matter.
It's awesome. It's this new superpower that I've acquired where you can just kind of say whatever just to combat someone else's opinion that you don't like for basically no reason, and kind of proceed to not support it with any facts or information.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty empowering. It's pretty noble.
I just like thought of it one day. Yeah, so Captain Bligh survives. I want to jump a little bit back a little bit. Like, what did you think of, so when they land in Tahiti, like you said, Clark Gable and I'll call him by, I'm gonna call the other guy by his character name. So Fletcher Christian and Roger Byam.
Clark Gable kind of gets the Tom Cruise effect, Where it's like this guy is just
That's
such a
Clark Gable.
celebrity. Where it's like that's just Clark Gable. Yeah.
Nobody with that jawline is named Fletcher.
Well, I wouldn't speak too soon on that. I got a
Um,
son on the way,
shit.
and he's looking
Fletcher
like a Fletcher.
Andriad.
Pretty good.
Fletcher Spippity Bop Bop Bop.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so there's like a romance in Tahiti. This whole the whole Tahiti section where they're interacting with like the indigenous people of Tahiti. First of all, I I feel like I say it so much in this podcast where I expect things to be offensive, but like they end up being tamer than I thought.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way.
So this is, based on something that actually happened. I cannot speak for how it actually happened, but in the movie, the indigenous people of Tahiti are treated pretty respectfully. Um,
I will say some of the dialogue is hard to follow. Like I couldn't really understand what people were saying. I guess
Yeah.
I would just attribute that to perhaps below average sound quality and also the
Yeah.
fact that people in the 1930s spoke very quickly and differently than we do today. But I feel like the first 20 minutes I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what are you saying?
Yeah, I felt the same way. What's funny too is like, so, it's the British Navy, but like Clark Gable just talks like an American guy.
Yeah, I
Some
guess
people have British accents, some people don't. It's kind of funny.
this was one of the first instances of actually not probably not. This is just cinema for as long as it's existed. People have just kind of said like, who cares?
Right.
This is in service of public entertainment.
Yeah.
That's the primary objective. Do you feel like I get the sense like as movies were just starting out, like especially this era, I feel like the grander the scope, the more acclaim that they got because people were so not used to seeing like they just want to see new things on camera. Like I'm sure this whole um they had the boat and the sailing and the storms. Like it was a pretty grand spectacle, and I think that probably impressed people.
I mean,
Whereas nowadays, I feel
yeah.
I feel like spectacle is kind of cheaper by the dozen, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I
Like
mean like everything's spectacle, so it's kind of like I can see spectacle at the drop of the
right,
snap of my finger, so it's
right.
like yeah.
I think that's why Avatar maybe didn't win. Like it wasn't a slam dunk best picture as opposed to maybe a more insular story.
If Avatar: The Way of Water screened in 1935, they would have been like they would have treated it as if like it was the second coming of Christ. They would have been like, this is our God now. Ewa is everything.
There's
Jig
no other
Sully is a
explanation
king.
except that this is. I mean, they wouldn't know how to explain the fact that it wasn't real, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't stupid. Like if someone said to them, like, "Hey, we just did this using technology," I'm sure they'd be like, "Oh, that's crazy," but wow.
Right.
Like I don't think they'd be like, "Those people are real."
Right. Like in 2023, you guys go to Pandora, which is a moon orbiting a planet outside of the Milky Way galaxy. That's crazy. No, I was like super impressed by this movie. I was watching it today and I was like, how did they do some of this shit? Like there was like lots of location shooting. It looks like they filmed like some stuff on like actual like boats sailing at sea. All the rear projection when they're like kind of ship sets looks really good. This movie, I was like, this movie, I don't know. I think it's like looks incredible and like the production is kind of immaculate.
It does look great. I do wonder how much they actually shot at sea. I don't know how much they actually shot at sea because there are definitely scenes where they're clearly using a projection behind them.
Yeah,
because it's fun. Like the characters aren't moving at all, but the background is like going crazy and waving in the background.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. The production was great.
Fletcher Christian and the fellow mutiners go back to Tahiti, but then Captain Bligh comes. They see like his boat like kind of off the coast approaching. So Fletcher Christian leaves with some of the crew. Some of like the officers, like including Roger Byam, stay behind because they're like, why didn't
we're gonna
like,
go back to England?
Yeah, because Roger Byam never really agreed to the mutiny. He just sort of got caught in it.
Which kind of a weak sauce move, Roger, right? Like he didn't. He's like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Not only does Captain Bligh turn his crew so drastically against him that they mutiny him, but on the second ship when he's out to find Fletcher Christian, that one fucking hits rocks and sinks.
What do you mean? Oh, when
Do you remember like
no.
when he's like kind of when he's just like chasing Fletcher Christian after Fletcher leaves Tahiti? He's like chasing him. Roger Byam's on the boat, back on the boat, like, and they're like, "Sir, there's like some rocks that like kind of like rocks up ahead that are like under the water, and it's like not enough space for us to sail." And he's like, "Keep going," and then
Oh
the ship
yeah.
sinks.
Well, then what happens? How do they get back to England?
I think they had like what he did the first time. They had like maybe one or two of those smaller boats, like those lifeboats or whatever.
How? How?
He lost
How
two
is he
boats.
not hanged? Like that's so negligent. That's insane. He lost two boats.
If I worked with large, expensive vehicles and I was just like, oh yeah, sorry, I lost two of them, they'd be like, what are you talking about? You're fired.
Also, I endangered the lives of like 3 dozen people.
Yeah.
Is that fine?
Like imagine crashing two planes and they're just like you would be like, okay, so obviously you can't keep flying planes. Like you kind of suck at it.
Has any pilot crashed 2 planes? Like if you crash a plane, do you get like a second chance on that? Or are they like, you can't be a pilot anymore, dude.
I
You might
think
go
it
to jail.
depends. Like
Well, I guess
like
if you
uh
crash a plane, you're most likely dead. But I mean, I guess you could survive.
like
Has,
Sully,
well,
the he
Sully was different because Sully. The plane was gonna crash due to reasons that were beyond his control, and then he saved the
well,
people on the plane.
well, that's what I mean. I think if there's like some kind of external factor that like you can't control,
Yeah.
I think if you're just like, oh, sorry, I kind of let go of the wheel there for a minute. I had to take a wicked piss.
Sorry, I let my rage get a hold of me again and crash the ship into rocks. Kind of a no-no on my part. My
Ca-
bad.
Captain Bligh absolutely needs a better help subscription.
You have to apply if anybody needs better help. He needs to talk to somebody.
His dad was probably a dill hole, and then he invented a dill hole out of his sperms.
He faced no repercussions for any of his actions, which is kind of crazy, but
He
I
just
guess
kind of
that's
got the
just
cold shoulder. That's it. That was his punishment.
yeah, that was the worst punishment, which is the worst punishment anyone can receive, truly, is the cold shoulder.
Like it was not like, oh, we're taking away your rank. Like you mop floors now.
Not even. They were like you could be a midshipman now. You used to
Right.
be a captain, now you can retire with a pension or something.
Yeah.
And instead everyone else is like, yeah, hang those traitorous dogs.
Yeah. For coming back to the British Navy,
Yeah.
which they're incredibly loyal to for no reason.
But Fletcher Christian, our hero, our protagonist, he kind of goes rogue too. So he goes rogue in a way that you'd expect. So he goes back to Tahiti, meets up with it. So he marries a woman that he met on the island. They have a child together. Um,
Yeah.
and then Bligh comes back for them. They see his ship and they're like, "We got to get out of here." He basically just like runs off with like, I don't know, a dozen natives, and they just like they go on their ship, the Bounty. I keep saying the Bounty, which Fletcher had stolen prior,
Yeah.
and then they go to like a random unknown island.
Yeah, and they sail the ship, so they have like everybody on board get off and sail to like on like one of the smaller boats, get to shore. And then they just run the bounty into the rocks so it
Yeah, they destroy it.
and then they burn it and they're like, we're gonna survive on this island, I guess, if we can.
That was that was a little over the top.
Which is crazy because they totally could have just like doubled back and gone back to Tahiti.
I guess their thinking was Bligh would have found them or England would have found them eventually.
Right.
But if I was one of those natives, I have no, what do I care? England doesn't want me.
Yeah.
England's not trying to hang me. I would like to go back to Tahiti with my other friends, please.
Yeah.
Like they're kind
Absolutely.
of shit out of luck, those
Yeah.
people. They're just Fletcher just decides for everybody that we're gonna land on this island that's so rocky that no ship can dock here. That way we'll
Yeah.
never be found. Meanwhile, I'd be
Um,
like, maybe I want to be found by somebody else.
um, last thing I want to say is just like talking about the timeline of the movie because they said they're going to sail for 2 years.
Yeah,
Um, and the movie will have like enormous time jumps, like between scenes. It'll be like, oh, so I guess like, because like Roger Byam when they stop at Tahiti, he like learns the native language,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, you got here 5 minutes ago. How'd you learn it already? But like, the assumption is that they've been here for like 6 months.
yeah. They've been there for a while.
And then by the end of the movie, it's been like 4 years total from the beginning of the movie to like the trial and Roger Byam getting back on, like being
Right.
revered by the British Navy.
But there's no time card or anything. I feel like movies
No.
back then, they always want to show a card for everything that was going on. And now it's nowhere to be found, even when it would have been helpful.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy development in movie. Like, because when we watched the worst movie ever made, the Broadway Melody,
Yeah.
it was like because silent film would just like have to establish what's going on in the scene before it started.
Yeah.
Like they kind of kept with that, so it'll be like this is like the next scene. It basically the card was like the next scene you're about to see is this
Yeah.
character's apartment, and it's like okay, I
Yeah.
probably could have picked that up from context
Yeah.
clues, but fine.
Yeah. They would highlight unnecessary details just to make sure, just to hold your hand and make sure you're not lost. This movie, they have time jumps that are years apart,
Yeah,
and you have no idea how much time has passed, and
Yeah.
they choose not to let you know.
Yeah.
I would say overall, I do like this movie. I think what it's lacking though is I did have trouble following some of the characters. I don't know how interesting or deep they were. Um, I thought that made it kind of hard to sympathize with some of them. Like you like Fletcher Christian, you like Roger and those guys, but they didn't feel that deep to me. Like they didn't feel that human. Like Roger's whole character's Navy guy, basically. Guy
right.
who joins the Navy.
The characters are the performances I would say are good enough to care, like are charming enough and like
Yeah.
engaging enough to carry you along, but the characters themselves are kind of like written very like surface level. It's like
Yeah,
this
they're
is
shallow.
hero guy. This is guy who's torn between British Navy and also his friendship with
Yes.
hero guy.
I agree.
This guy is just a maniac villain.
I think they were well performed characters, but not well written characters.
Right.
Yeah. I think that was probably the biggest drawback. Everything else is very interesting, and I like the story, and the scale and scope of it was impressive. Even, even by today's standards, like some of the shots that they got were, I think there's a certain bit of magic to it where you're like, this is not CGI. This is not like they had to film this. Well, sometimes it's like projection or whatever, but
even that's cool though. When it looks good, you're like, damn, that's
Yeah.
like, because I've seen that look terrible.
yeah,
So
for
like,
sure.
that's crazy that you made it look good.
But they definitely did put a lot of time and attention and focus on detail.
Yeah.
And I think that probably would earn this the best picture nod. I'm sure I don't know. I couldn't recognize any of the other nominees, but
So Mutiny on the Bounty won. The second nomination on this list, though, I'm gonna hold for the end because I think it's gonna blow your gourd to bits.
okay. I doubt that, but fine.
Nah.
Okay.
Okay. So Mutiny on the Bounty won. Another nominee was Alice Adams. Ever heard of her?
Never.
We also have Captain Blood.
That sounds awesome. I would
Yeah.
watch Captain Blood for
Hell
sure.
yeah.
What do you think that's about?
Probably a captain who like drinks blood or some shit. It's about a vampire captain.
God, that's cool. Okay. Maybe Captain Blood. I might have to watch that, honestly.
Then we have David Copperfield, based on obviously the Charles Dickens novel. So The Informer
Deserved.
is the next nominee.
Vague.
Les Miserables is the
Oh,
another nominee based on
Jackman
the Victor
strikes again.
Hugo. Yeah, Anne Hathaway. Um, the next nominee is called The Lives of a Bengal Lancer.
What's that mean?
I don't know. Probably
Like
fake.
like a Bengal tiger?
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess so.
Not that
Um,
interested.
Midsummer Night's Dream is the next nominee based on the
Ugh,
Shakespeare play. The
shoot
next
me.
one is called Naughty Marietta.
Oh, what's
So I'll
she up
see.
to? A
I
lot
think
of
there's,
nominees.
yeah, I know there's so many. I wonder if there's a crossover between Captain Blood and Naughty Marietta,
Damn.
kind of
That would
like
be a
Butch and
sequel to remember.
Sundance.
Sweet.
Um, the final two nominees are Ruggles of Red Gap. I'm not
No.
kidding.
No.
Put out by Paramount, and the final nominee is Top Hat. But
Like,
the one I skipped over,
is that the sequel to Top Gun? What is Top Hat?
it's about a hat. It's about a leopard
Beautiful.
skin pillbox hat.
God, we need it. See, this is Hollywood's really producing the stories that the people want. You know, these are the stories we need to hear.
Like, what's hot right now? I guess hats.
Hats, yeah, everyone loved hats back then, so I'm sure it probably went over very well.
But the nominee I left off the list
Mhm.
is the title is Broadway Melody of 1936. I am not
No
fucking
way.
kidding.
It's a remake.
They made like 4 Broadway melodies. It's not a sequel.
So unbelievable.
It's just sort
to
of like
me.
basically taking the concept of like Broadway musical production.
Call it something else, right?
I agree.
That's so dumb. I hate
Yeah.
that so much.
Yeah.
I would give that the negative Oscar. I
Yeah,
would give
that one.
that the what's Oscar backwards? I would give that the Roscoe. That gets the
Uh,
Roscoe Award for sure.
Rasco.
That's a Rasco for that one. Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, those are the nominees. I think Mutiny on the Bounty is Best Picture worthy. I think
Yeah.
it probably deserved to win. I mean, Captain Blood sounds really good.
I
So
will I cannot say for certain that it deserved Best Picture because Captain Blood is out there.
yeah,
I will have to review Captain Blood and just see.
yeah,
But other than that, I think this wasn't a film worthy of a Best Picture award.
yeah.
Well, if only it had won that. What
It
did
won
it win? Best.
outstanding
Right.
production.
Right. It won. Yeah, it's worthy of Best Outstanding Production. It's a bop.
Hell yeah.
Cool. Good for that. Do you want
Uh,
to do you want to hear what the truth about this film?
yeah.
What some of the people had to say about it?
Wake up, sheeple. We're getting to the truth.
That's right. So I found some reviews online for Mutiny on the Bounty.
What's the consensus generally? If you had to
The
gauge the
consensus
response,
is
is
the
it mixed?
consensus is probably mid.
Okay.
1 star. This was not like Pirates of the Caribbean at all. Score 19%. I don't know what that means.
Like out of 100?
I don't know. I guess so. Alternate title: The Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Men Tell No Tales. The acting is good enough. You understand their anger fully and agree with them, but it just goes on and continues to be the same thing. More like a mutiny on my free time. There it is.
I kind of get that. Like I said, it's pretty repetitive for like
Yeah.
an hour and a half before there's the mutiny.
Some films work brilliantly in 1935. Oh, this is a review. 1 star. This is in a category of films that are too ambitious for the technology of the day. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of, yeah, I disagree, but yeah,
Like, do you think maybe that they were trying too hard to go too big and it maybe wasn't the time yet and they didn't have the technology? I kind of like that they did. It's fun. I feel like you have to find creative solutions and workarounds if you don't quite have the technology to produce a ship movie.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but also I think like they pull it off. I don't think this
Yeah.
movie doesn't really feel inhibited by technological stuff. I imagine shooting
No,
this movie was a nightmare, but
as with
it
all
doesn't
films.
it doesn't feel like there's anything holding back
Yeah.
the story they want to tell from being told.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Thanks.
I support you.
Thanks, man.
Do you think how would you do a sequel for this? Actually, better yet, how would you do a trequel for this? So picture the studio says, "We love it. We're going to do the sequel." They've made the sequel. What's the sequel to that movie?
The second one, Bly isn't the villain. We follow Bly in the second one, and whatever the writer does with that one, fine.
Mhm.
We follow him in the aftermath of the first movie. In the second one, he's dealing with stuff, but then in the third
Yeah.
movie, he's like, I have fallen so below where I was. He's actually like mopping floors, and he's like,
He's a deckhand.
yeah, he's like, I'm gonna find Fletcher Christian and restore my reputation once and for all. And
By
he like hunts
bringing him
like,
in.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's like a hunt, a final hunt.
Okay. Sounds like Rambo.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
And
that's
Bly
cool.
is kind of the main character. We follow him most of the time.
Okay. I like it except for the fact that I hate Bly so much. I'm sure it would be a terrible main character. Like there's no way he would be a sympathetic person.
But we have to, well, I think maybe he's become humble in the way he was humble in the first in the only movie that exists, the first movie where he was on the small boat and he was actually a good captain. I think that's where his attitude is, but by the end of the movie he's reverted to his old self again.
Yeah.
Or maybe he does finally learn something. I don't know. I'm just pitching.
I think the trequel should be 135. No, I think it should be I'm gonna say 150,000 years into the future.
That's a take I can get behind.
I think that would be cool. I think they both end up people latch on to this story so much that they've cryogenically frozen both all the pertinent characters in the story. Except Fletcher Christian, who kind of like finds this magic coconut juice and he just gains immortality.
Yeah.
But so it's immortal Christian versus Robo Bly. And immortal Christian has to come out of hiding because Robo Bly is running for president of the universe. And he knows he's a corrupt cyborg, so to speak. So immortal Christian comes out of hiding. He leaves. He finally leaves that island. They were never able to find him, and he's got to go to across the galaxy to basically hunt down Captain, soon to be President Bly, and stage a smear campaign against him.
That's the conflict. Is
Yeah.
the staging of a smear campaign?
Yeah, he's trying to get some dirt on Bly.
That's it.
He's
There's
trying to
no
spread
like,
the word. Yeah.
there's no fighting like physically. It's more
No,
just like
this
guy sucks.
it's a political espionage. It's a politidrama.
I was with you until the smear campaign.
Really?
Yeah.
I was with me not at
Don't-
all until the smear campaign.
Oh, interesting.
Once that happened, I was like, yeah, no, actually there's something here.
This movie was good.
It was good.
Next week
Oh.
we're talking 1995 Best Picture winner,
Oh, I was almost alive.
Forrest J. Gump.
Wow. All right.
All right. See you farts next week. And stay wienering. That's my new catchphrase. You like that?
Stay wienering.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool.
1, 2, 3, 4. These boys only want the best stuff. They want the cream of the crop. They don't want none of that Michael Bay shit. They want the shit that bops. Oscar bait, black and white. Maybe something French. If it's got more than one explosion, honey, put that shit on the bench. Oscar wieners. Oscar Wieners. Oscar Wieners. These boys are the Oscar Wieners. Oscar Wieners.
Thank goodness, dude. Now we can I can be my true self. You have a new mug every episode.
Thank you.
I meant face. You have a new face every episode.